Welcome all to the first webinar of ThingsRecon, presenting you supply chain intelligence. We're here today. I'm the CEO of ThingsRecon, and with me, my dear colleague Steph, who is the CPO of the company and the founder. So welcome, Steph. So let's do this.
Welcome, Robin. Yeah, let's do this. I'm not sure how you're gonna start, but
What we're gonna do?
Exciting times, like I say.
Yeah, it's we've been working hard to get here, and super exciting time. So fire up the presentation, please.
I'll do that.
What we want to do, we want to give you a short overview of supply chain intelligence, and we'll give you a high-level overview of the platform, and of course the live demo, which will be run by Steph. And before we start, because we are not just another generic scoring platform, but we really want to give you insight in all your digital connected assets and suppliers, where we give you a one-to-one unique scoring mechanism between you and your suppliers. And how we are doing that, we're going to tell you today. So ThingsRecon is one platform with two solutions, and we started this journey a few years ago, where we started building our own proprietary scanner, which is more known in the Gartner quadrant as an external survey scanner. But because how we do it and how we approach this technique, we rather call it a deep discovery, and it discovers your own assets, but also all your supplier connections. And when we start with defining and actually discovery of the platform, we can start with a single domain, and the single domain will discover all connected domains, all your FQDNs, and we slowly start discovering all your assets as a 360 view of around your company. So what's there, which assets do we find, and we put them all in buckets, like Steph calls them little CMDBs. So that's all your applications, all your live applications, and one of the techniques we are using, and we are quite unique in, is that we use geo-located scanning. And what does that mean? So when we identify an asset somewhere around the world, we look to the closest location where there's a GCP. So we are hosted on the Google Cloud, and in that location, and currently I think we are running around about 40 locations around the world. There we start up a little server, and then we scan from that region. So imagine that you have assets in Saudi Arabia or Brazil or US. So we don't just scan from one single location, like from our EU instance or the US, but when we identify an asset in Brazil, we start up a little server in Brazil, we scan from there, and with that, we are bypassing any geofencing or CDN Akamai limitation, and that gives you much better results and more findings. So it's a really rich platform of assets, and we are able to identify, because of that technique, a lot more than even if we compare it with ourselves when we are scanning from the EU to Brazil or to another location. Sometimes it's even 50 to 70% more that we are able to identify, which is a good base of the rest of the functionalities of the platform. So see it on the left side where you see all the things. So we give you insights in all the things, and we rate each of the assets if there's any hygiene issues, and we show you with the evidence where we found it, what we found, and how you can make it better. And with that, we are also identifying all your digitally connected suppliers. And that can be your normal suppliers, but can also be technology providers. And When we are identifying that, we are able to, and we have a patent pending for that, which we are quite proud of how we developed that. But we are really able to set a unique relationship between you and your supplier. And if you see the big dot in the middle on the left bottom, the line between you and your supplier is a unique connection which we are able to identify and rate. So we are not just rating your supplier, but really the relationship you have with them. So that's the start. So we identify the supplier, and then we drill down in, okay, what kind of connections you have with that supplier. So that could be where you're hosted or what kind of services you're using. And we'll show you where we find it, how we find it, and also we will rate that per assets. And we call that cyber hygiene resilience. And it's not only that we are focusing on the cyber part, but also we are enriching each of your suppliers with GRC data. So it's financial, geopolitical, and compliance data. Steph, I think it's how many data points we have on each supplier?
Quite a few, I would say. That's is it what 200 and something now, or something like that? It's quite a lot, to be honest.
Yeah. So we have a big army of over 200 agents, which are constantly working to first get the data, but then also refresh the data on a continuous base. And it a little bit depends on what kind of data it is. Some, for geopolitical data or compliance, it could be once a month or every quarter. But financial and also open source intelligence, so more news-related signals, we are constantly looking for, which might change the risk rating of that specific supplier, which because it can impact you. So once we pick up a signal, and it could be a downtime like we've seen in the near past with Cloudflare of Amazon, which we I think all felt in our day-to-day routine, that if one of those big companies are hit, that we will feel that, but we will tell you where you are hit in your ecosystem and how that might impact you.
That's an interesting subject. The thing that how that when you have those suppliers going down, and then when you rely so much on them, and we know, because when we had those events that happened, I mean, you could almost say that half of the world was panicking because they couldn't connect to their software or their piece, and then they had to wait. So because we all work from home now, I mean, most of us. And then so having those I would say those piece of software, the tools that we're using on a daily basis, not being accessible, then suddenly it's like the clock stops, and then up it comes back. So it's a good point.
No, it's interesting that we've seen with our customers, for example, some payment providers who are around the globe, that when they're hit, and even if it's containered in a specific location, that because everything is so connected nowadays,
exactly,
that you will still see that we are impacted. I remember myself that I was trying to do a payment just for tickets, airline ticket, and you have to go back to the basics now. But that's interesting that we are able really to identify where you have your assets, how you're connected, and that you can drill down. And a customer of ours, I think he said it well, we really are able to give you a sort of X-ray view of your whole digital ecosystem, and really drill down. Everything is evidence-based. So Steph, you will show in a minute, but you can really drill down to all the financial, geopolitical data we have, and then see where we find it. We really go, deep into the script on the external surfacing, deep discovery, but also into PDF files to look for evidence. And hopefully we'll show in a bit. But when we identify that a supplier is, for example, compliant with ISO, but we see that the application risk is rated low, we are able to tell you now, okay, why is it, but especially how can you be better with your supplier, and make sure you are mediated together and to be stronger together in the end. And I think Steph, maybe you can elaborate with that. The flywheel on the right, but the monitoring, I think that's quite unique what we're doing there.
Yeah, I mean, the way we want to do it is basically have like a live map, because everything changes, around us. And before it was just basically us, but now the way we connected this, it means that we need to monitor everything around us. And so that creates events. And based on those events, we are basically doing certain things. And then we will get results from those events, maybe on your organization, but maybe on the supplier, and how this is going to impact you. It could be impact you in terms of like, what is the blast radius, if something happens. Yeah. So to be able to basically assess on a continuous basis and have, our engines validating all the data, then we can help to prioritize much better, where you need to put your efforts, who you need to contact, what is going to be impacted. So a couple of questions that we can answer in here, and that will help with your prioritization. And then, of course, that will allow you to have a continuous refresh, of that whole 360 degrees view of your digital surface. I think that's the best way to say it. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see that most of the companies know their top 500 suppliers, right? But
correct.
Hopefully. It's interesting to see that we discover often suppliers they don't even know they're working with, but yet are quite vital in the work process, in the whole process, and in the day-to-day running of a company.
Let's call them digital shadow suppliers.
Yeah, and maybe you can give some examples of suppliers we found, and which were, for example, not approved by or even not inside of security teams and procurement.
Yeah, it's always that surprise, when you run the discovery, and then typically people will go and select, say, oh, I don't know about this one. Who is that supplier? I mean, where is the supplier? Because suddenly it's like, I want to know. Because of course, it's your systems and it's your environment, and then suddenly you see a name that pops up, you have no idea where it comes from. Well, then we can show in which context, that supplier is being used. And then, of course, that can create a completely new conversation within the organization, trying to understand where the supplier comes from.
So shall we jump into the platform?
We can jump to the platform for sure. Let's go back to the view. But before that, I don't know. I was going to ask you, Robin. I mean, in terms of, like you mentioned, army, that we have an army behind. Maybe just can you explain a little bit how this army works? Because it's not just like you have soldiers and then they do their stuff. There's a little bit more into it. Yes.
Yeah, when we started this, and we want to use AI where it has its best purpose. So at the moment we are running over 200 different agents who are all very specialized in what they're doing. So we're using a hybrid. We have a hybrid setup of that army where we're using Gemini and OpenAI to really see how can we best use the models and get the best results. So each of the agents, they are specialized in what they do, and they bring it to actually the manager, which is a data auditor, to really verify if this data is the best. And we've introduced something quite unique, is that we introduce a confidence score. So each piece of data is where we found is evidence backed, but also rated if it's if you can trust it, because we don't want it to hallucinate
Exactly.
like many AI models do.
So I will give you some intelligence because there was some background noise behind. I'm not sure if it was coming from you, Robin, but if not mistaken, that little sound behind looked like a tumble dryer from Samsung.
It's my agent running in the background.
Agent running behind. Yeah, you got a message. So yeah, let's. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna just basically jump in quickly into the platform and show you how we go from the discovery in terms of like how we can find the suppliers and what do we do with that information. And so let's jump in. So what I'm gonna do. So up there you go. A little bit of a click, click, click before I got into to the right screen. But so what do we have in here? So basically, just a quick disclaimer: everything that we have in here is fictional. Okay, so all the ratings. So don't worry. Even if you see your name somewhere, there are those ratings. So I always say the cyber hygiene score that we provide are not the real ones. So just I wanted to mention that at the beginning of the call. So what do we do when we do the discovery? So the first part of the discovery is trying to understand, obviously, that surface of the organization. Okay, so whatever is connected, on the internet, from the organization side. So for that, we've built an engine to be able to create a living map of that digital surface. Okay, so how do we start? I mean, we don't need much. I mean, like any type of bad guys out there, they can start from one entry point, and then from there discover, of course, the digital surface of the organization. And it all depends how deep you're going to go. Yeah. So how deep you're going to go in terms of where you're going to find the information to be able to pivot, to be able to see other assets, and how you're going to create that map. Yeah, that's what is important in here, because all those entry points, everything that we're going to be discovering, are going to lead us to those other entry points that is not you, but it's basically those digitally connected suppliers. Okay, so those ones that are making that 360 view. So what is important in here is to understand, what you have, where is it, what you got on, what you have on those kind of things, and also who you're connected to. Okay, so when we discover the attack surface, we start creating basically a map of all those suppliers. And as you can see in here on the right side, because we're going to concentrate basically on that supply chain part, we are identifying, the digitally connected suppliers, and we are also identifying, every connection that we have with our suppliers, and that's basically your context. So the context gives us obviously the information in terms of like how you're connected to the supplier, and it's gonna start building up that map and what we call it in here. To be honest, I'm gonna just click on it so you can see it. We will have like a table view, if you want, in here that shows the suppliers, like a list, basically, like a little CMDB of suppliers. If you go back to what Robin said, and then what I like to call it, we will create a CMDB view of all the suppliers. But what we wanted to do is not just to give you a view and a list of suppliers. We wanted to see how we can help you guys to prioritize the suppliers based on what we are seeing, based on that connection. So we started working on the concept of proximity, and we created basically a little score, if you want, that tells us how close, how integrated you are to that supplier. Okay. Interestingly, when we do those type of things with our customers, we're going to see always the same top 5, top 10. It's going to be always the Amazon, the Googles, the Microsoft, this world, because we all work with those guys. Yeah. So it's normal that we're going to see them. But what is important in here with that proximity, it's allowing us to see, for example, how a supplier moves, within the surface. You might bring more of that supplier, maybe more technology from that supplier, or maybe less. So the proximity score will be changing over time. And then if you take the context into the equation, if you want to, let's see, check on the suppliers that are providing you, let's say, with your mails or maybe the hosting part, you can drill down into that, and you will see that the proximity will completely change based on the context we are looking at them. So,
Steph, it's still important to monitor those bigger companies because
Of course.
of the connection we find. So it's not just a generic score we will have on Amazon.
Exactly. It's all about that resilience between you and the supplier, and because of that connection. So basically, everything that we have discovered, we are able to obviously calculate that. So yeah, it's not generic. It's not generic in as such, but it's basically you and them together, and that's how that resilience is built. Yeah. So yeah, exactly, Robin. That's a very good point. So if let's imagine I want to drill down into one of those suppliers. So I'll just select basically the first one. Sorry for this one, but anyway, don't worry, it's all fictional. And the first part is like that summary, and like you mentioned, Robin, at the beginning, while we're trying to look at, is not just the cyber part, I would say, of the organization, but we want to see like the geopolitical stand, the financial, how the financials are doing, the compliance side, and of course that proximity that obviously is giving us that context to that supplier. Yeah. So those little, I will say, categories in here are always refreshed, with new data, and they change every time there's an event and something that happens. Then it will reflect back into the portal. So our first part is basically giving you like that quick summary, that quick view of all the pillars. Okay, so we're looking at the information. So it could be like, current head counts. Maybe you want to know, if there are an organization lost 30% of their headcount, that could potentially impact your organization in a way. From a geopolitical, maybe there is a data center somewhere in a country there that you don't approve. Yeah. Or from a financial perspective, maybe like a very big drop in shares, potentially in terms of like something happened, maybe selling a company or subsidiary or something like that. Any type of news around that. From open source intelligence, well, then it's Robin. We do a lot in there in open source intelligence. Yeah. So
Yeah, I think there's about 50 signals we're constantly monitoring. So from outages to data breaches to any kind of, like you said, drop in employees. It's a lot, and and we look also into the context. Maybe we can dive into that. How you're using that supplier. So depending on that, we're looking for more signals.
no, exactly. So those news are very good because then, if something happens, it might impact your organization, but from a different angle. Yeah. So it could be that you need to, as a CISO, imagine if you're a CISO coming in here and then you would like to discuss that maybe with the procurement team or something like that. You will have information in here to be able to have those discussions internally that you need to have with your peers. Yeah. So when we look at that view, of course, there's a lot of data, okay, behind, and obviously we needed to bring that to the platform. And so if I just select basically the business intelligence here, you will see the vast amount of data or events, if you want, that we are capturing during our monitoring of the supplier. So those events in here, or basically those little, I would say, points of discovery, like Robin mentioned at the beginning, we all check on them with the confidence score. Okay, so we all check, because whatever we want to put in here, we want to put something in here that is basically true, yeah, that exists, that we have the backing behind to be able to show you the evidence in terms of, why we discovered that, and where is it, so you can even have a look at yourself. And maybe Robin, from I always like when you explain the part, like how do we do that with that little army behind, because it's not just one guy, saying, hey, I found this. There's a little bit more to that, correct?
No, that's yeah, and it's a combination. We have a setup, actually a hybrid setup of AI agents, but also our data team behind this is constantly auditing the data, and where we see a difference also, and we classify the type of company, and especially the size of company, because a small medium enterprise company in France, we are targeting very direct to look for local sources of data, while for the large global enterprises, the data is much more in the public space. So it's a hybrid setup of
Yeah.
AI who gather the first layer of information, then everything is audited automatically, and each of the data points has its own KPI, but then also there's this manual. Often we pick out companies to audit it also manually to make sure that the data we're showing here is very trustworthy.
So I have just like I'm just looking at a little questioning here. It's like, how do we are different from the traditional EASMs and third party risk tools out there? I will give my perspective, Robin. If you want to jump in, you can jump in, of course. So from my perspective, it's like where we're different is basically in the depth. Yeah, is by looking in the depth of your external attack surface. So if you go back to that EASM side of stuff, yeah, we're not just surfacing things. We're going inside. We're trying to understand how everything is built and what you have inside those things, how those are related or basically interconnected, because all that intelligence allows us to have a larger picture. Maybe I would say a lot of data, yeah. But when you look at the data and you understand the data, yeah, then you can surface those type of information. Then you can see those suppliers, and this is where we're not claiming that we have full visibility. No one will have full visibility. But it's taking that depth, taking that information, and be able to contextualize that within the organization. Who is the organization? How do they work? Where do they work? With who do they work? And then that will give us, another level, I will say, of visibility in terms of who you're connected to. Because in here, what we're showing you guys is basically all the suppliers that are digitally connected to your surface. But if you have other suppliers that you're working with, yeah, you can always add them. Yeah, and who knows if when you add them, when we run the, how do I call it, say, the assessment on those suppliers, when we start the monitoring process, we might find then that there is a connection from that supplier to yourself. So we maybe at the beginning we don't see it because we are going from you to them, but imagine if you are now able to go from them to you. So we will have a proximity, we will have a digital connection. And then obviously there will be the other suppliers where there's completely no digital connection, but you will still need to have some information that you can bring to the GRC teams.
Yeah, we see actually three groups there, Steph. It's the managing and monitoring of your existing suppliers who are digitally connected, but also the onboarding of new suppliers where there's no connection yet, but still you want to you have a good understanding of the posture of those companies, and use that, for example, to guardrails, to put the guardrails into the contracts, and then onboard them. And obviously, like we said earlier, the discovery of the unknown suppliers who are, there's so many tools now out there. And one of the CISOs, one of our customer CISOs said there were 2 AI tools approved, and there's 270 out there. So there's a lot of shadow IT and shadow suppliers, which we are able to discover if there's a digital connection.
No, exactly. So that's that.
Maybe jump into how we analyze.
So
With all the data we have a supplier.
Yeah, the thing is always like the data. The problem is like now overkill of data, like we say. But what we're trying to do in here is to analyze the supplier. Again, not generic, is based on how you're using it, who you are as an organization, and how you're using the supplier. And for that, we've developed something called a SWOT. And the SWOT allows us to have like a view in terms of like, I'm the person looking at that supplier, and I would like to understand how this is going to affect me as an organization. I want to understand the strengths, what the weaknesses and things like the threats. And that SWOT view in here allows us to summarize, all the data points that we have collected, take into context your organization, and be able to see how this is going to impact you in terms of like who you're going to be talking to, how and what you're going to be doing about that supplier, because it's a living map. Yeah. And like we were just discussing before with Robin, I mean, all those little points that we are getting in here, they are continuously refreshed. Yeah. So Robin, how often do we refresh the SWOT? I would say
But
all
it
the time.
depends on the refresh rate and the data of all those 250 data points behind. So it's triggered constantly, and depending on if there's new data to find, we are updating this SWOT as well.
Yeah, that's the beauty of having that army behind, I would say.
Yeah.
But
I think more interesting, Steph, on this
yeah,
SWOT is that we do this based on the user of the platform, so the persona.
the persona, correct.
So you can be CISO or procurement or from legal, and depending on your role in the organization, you will have your own SWOT view. And I think that's pretty cool because you don't see that often with other platforms. So we really want to give you this in the best possible view. So it's contextualized. So how are you using the supplier, but also who are you in what kind of role you are in the organization, and you will all have your own view.
Yeah, exactly. It's like to be able to action basically everything that we have discovered. Yeah. So the SWOT is like Robin is saying, is something that is continuously refreshed, and you can take it as a monitoring, I would say, part of your process, but it could be also for due diligence. Yeah, like you mentioned, there's a lot of those that we are doing now where we're taking a supplier and we're doing a due diligence on them, and we're providing a SWOT analysis to the organization to be able to show them, in terms of who is that supplier, what is happening now. But of course, that's the static view. And then if you're going to onboard that supplier, you mentioned about guardrails and contracts and things like this. So it's very important to have that information to be able to take those decisions on how you're going to use the supplier. Are you going to be using the cloud instance? Are you going to put that on your premises? That's the kind of things that you can take out of it. But also how you're going to communicate with the other rest of of your team. Yeah, like you mentioned CISOs, but there's also others that we are looking at bringing that information to, the procurement people, the legal people, the GRC teams, that they will be able to dive into this and then have conversations around the suppliers. And is that supplier good for us? Do we need to put something in the contract? And how are we going to approach the integration into our surface with that supplier? So the SWOT analysis is quite important here, because we are taking all those data points that we have collected to be able to create that view in here. Is that in terms of Robin, in terms of like the summary, the intelligence data, and I didn't mention yet, but we have the connection. So we can tell you, where the supplier is in your organization. And let's take an event. Yeah. For example, we were talking about these events of Cloudflare, and we were discussing that last week, Robin, about if something happens in Cloudflare, it's not just about my organization in terms of how it's going to be impacted. Yeah, it's also the rest of the surface. Yeah, in terms and how this is going to. I like to call it the blast radius. And I'm taking that example of just if a system get disconnected, what's going to happen, because you are affected, but also potentially other suppliers that are using the same supplier. So that concentration of suppliers. Yeah.
No, it's of course also if you look to, for example, OWASP, and it's the supply chain becomes more and more. Just for the listeners, I don't know if you're aware, but supply chain came into the top 3 out of nowhere in the OWASP top 10 2025. Obviously, it's also yesterday I was a black hat in London. Everybody talks about supply chain, and not so much because it's new, but because we have seen large events in the recent past with Jaguar Land Rover as maybe one of the biggest in history. But you see it constantly, with NPM packages, dependencies. So everything is connected nowadays. So we need to understand the supply chain and your third and fourth party connections. And obviously with DORA and NIS2, which are for 2026 to important regulatory topics, it's important to understand that blast radius.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So from my side, yes, exactly what you mentioned in here is like those events that happened recently with the NPM packages and understanding, where you might be impacted is also very interesting, but also your suppliers, because we always look at ourselves. That was kind of the traditional way of doing stuff before. All our crown jewels before were sitting on our premises, and today that changes. Everything is outside now, and so how do you make sure that data, those crown jewels, are protected? And then the supplier that you choose is very important, of course, depending on how you're going to use it, in the context that you're going to use it, and what is important for your organization, and of course their suppliers. So it's not just the third party, Robin. It's also the fourth, the fifth, and then, like I always say, what happens after?
You eat your own tail, Steph.
You eat your own tail. Yeah, everything is connected. So from our side, I had a question last time in terms of like, if I have, let's say, a supplier that I use for, let's say, an HR application. So how we can help to understand, how the supplier is protected on the way we're using it currently with the organization. So I wanted to take that example because what I've seen and what I've done some analysis with using our platform is that when we detect a supplier, we're going to detect where they are connected to you. Okay, so they will be sitting somewhere in your configuration that we have discovered and went through, and so then we can understand what kind of activities, let's say, the supplier does. It could be, for example, sending emails on your behalf. It could be now telling us, oh, you're using that supplier, so maybe your employees are connecting to that portal. Yeah, and how many times we've seen that, Robin, where when we were doing the, let's say, the reverse discovery, is that we're able to find the portals where the employees are connected, which are individual instances built specifically for the organization. And that's true, that basically looking at the supplier from that other angle, and then suddenly you can then use that to be able to prioritize your supplier, because now maybe you had no idea, or maybe you already knew, but maybe there are employees or people working with the organization that are connecting to those portals, and then therefore that supplier might be much more critical than it was at the beginning, or because it changes, suppliers changes all the time, so you need to monitor them.
But often, Steph, it's not always. I mean, it's often also misconfiguration, right? Just user forgets to tick a box, and
correct.
Of course, we also see a lot of outdated components and things which we or misconfigurations. But there's also user errors which we are able to pick up.
I want to jump on that outdated component that you just mentioned, Robin, because it's very important. It's like when imagine here, so you're using suppliers, and then suddenly there is like something that hits the news, about 0 day or whatever, and one of those components get affected. Okay, you're gonna be first looking at, okay, do you have it? Do I have it? That's your first kind of what you need to do, because you're trying to protect your organization. But you also need to check the supplier, because maybe one of the suppliers is affected by that specific potential vulnerability, and that could have an impact on you in a different way. So by understanding how you're connected, how you're working with the supplier, and hopefully us giving you that information, you'll be able then to know what needs you to do. Maybe it's not just about, hey, I'm going to disconnect that cable, like we always do. If something happens in your laptop, that's the first thing, disconnect the cable. So in here, you're not going to just disconnect the supplier like that, but at least you will understand how the supplier is your organization, and then put maybe some mitigations in place, maybe a rule, a firewall, maybe something in there. That is that kind of data, and that depth allows you to take those decisions when something happens out there. And then we've seen that many times it happens. Maybe Robin, from you, because I see a question here. How quickly can a team see value after onboarding, and what is required to get started? I mean, you can.
No, and I think that's the beauty of building something from scratch, and also what was our vision as a company. It should be the whole discovery. Often we just ask for your root domain. Just give our your most important domain, and from there our tool will find all the connection. And of course, the more information we have, the better it becomes. So over time, the tool becomes more intelligent. But the first discovery is often within 24 to 48 hours, depending on the size of your company, obviously. But all the supplier connections, we find them automatically because of our technique of going into the scripts to really pick up any signal and signal with whom you're working. And if there's a digital connection, we often find them. And of course, like you said, Steph, you're also able to add them manually if there's no digital connection available. It could be an oil supplier where you trade in ships and there's no digital connection. But we want to have the onboarding as quick as possible and as easy as possible. So often within a few days you're onboarded and good to go and get your first insight. And then with refreshing and constantly monitoring the platform, because it's very important to this is a living map, as I said in the beginning. Because we see changes of and updates of platform, new releases, which might impact you. So it's a great tool to constantly monitor that whole ecosystem.
So Robin, I'm conscious of time. I mean, we've been talking. I'm just looking at it, and then we just have 1 minute left. So maybe we can just close on a quick conclusion in terms of ThingsRecon and business intelligence.
Yeah, I think it was fun to do. I hope we inspired you. Of course, the proof is in the pudding. So please reach out to us, and we're always happy to run a quick scan and give you your first glimpse of your digital ecosystem.
Perfect.
So I think that's
well,
we are here to help you.
Yeah. Thank you, Robin, and thank you for listening.
See you next time.
See you next time.
Bye.